Hi everyone, I'm Amelia. Today I want to tell you the story of a company that didn't just build computers, it changed the way the world lives. From a tiny garage in California to the most powerful tech empire on Earth, Apple became more than a company. It became a symbol. For decades, millions of people lined up outside stores, waiting for the next device that could change their lives. But behind the clean design and billion-dollar launches was a story filled with risk, obsession, collapse, and reinvention. And now, as the company enters a completely new era of AI, Vision Pro, and life after Tim Cook, one question is starting to grow louder than ever. What happens next to the Apple empire? If you enjoy deep stories about the world's biggest companies, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's go back to where it all began. The modern tech industry presents itself as an abstract empire of glass and cloud computing. But to understand the origins of a trillion-dollar valuation, you have to look past the pristine storefronts and focus on the smell of burning flux. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak moved into this suburban garage in Cupertino with a highly specific ambition. They wanted to change the way humans interact with machines, starting with the hardware they built by hand. Their first attempt, the Apple I, was a utilitarian slab of exposed circuitry. There was no case, no keyboard, and no monitor, just a raw board that required the user to assemble the rest of the machine themselves. This gritty origin illustrates a consistent theme in technology. Innovation begins by engineering a solution to a tangible, physical problem, rather than chasing market scale. 8 years later, that garage project evolved into the 1984 Macintosh. It moved computing away from obscure text commands and introduced a graphical interface, establishing a new standard where users navigated a digital environment using a mouse and icons. Despite the breakthrough, the machine struggled. It carried a retail price of nearly $2,500 and suffered from limited memory, which caused sales to stall shortly after launch. The resulting financial pressure triggered a power struggle in the boardroom. By 1985, the internal friction between the visionary founder and the board of directors led to Steve Jobs being forced out of the company. This era proved that a revolutionary product cannot save a company if internal leadership is fractured and pricing is out of reach for consumers. Without a unified direction, Apple entered a decade of strategic drift. They released dozens of confusing, disconnected product lines, from digital cameras to handheld PDAs, most of which failed to find an audience. While Apple struggled with hardware, Microsoft focused on a software-driven strategy. They aimed to dominate the business sector by licensing their operating system to every major computer manufacturer. The Windows operating system soon became the default global standard for offices and schools. This left Apple's proprietary hardware isolated, and the company's market share began a steady, dangerous decline. This drift highlights the danger of losing a core focus. When a pioneer stops offering a clear advantage, the market quickly standardizes around the most pragmatic and widely available utility. This chart tracks Apple's global revenue. Between 1995 and 1997, sales plummeted, dropping by billions of dollars. By summer 1997, Apple reached its absolute lowest point, within weeks of running out of cash entirely, facing total bankruptcy. This decay manifested as thousands of identical, dusty cardboard boxes of unsold computers filling warehouses. The failure led to desperate boardroom negotiations and the layoff of thousands of employees. Corporate collapse is often the result of overhead costs and product complexity growing faster than the revenue they generate. Apple had become too expensive to maintain and too disorganized to compete. When Steve Jobs returned in 1997, he didn't start by inventing a new device. He prioritized destruction. He looked at the chaos of the existing company and began a surgical removal of its failing parts. This diagram shows the scale of that reduction. Jobs cut 70% of the company's product line, forcing the engineering teams to focus all their energy on a simple 4-quadrant matrix of computers. The first result of this extreme focus was the iMac. It was an all-in-one translucent desktop that looked different from every other gray PC on the market, signaling that the company's design-led approach had returned. Effective turnarounds require the discipline to end good projects to ensure the most essential ones have the resources to survive. Scaling a hardware company required more than just a return to creative leadership. It needed an operational foundation to support the new products. Joni Ive led a team focused on industrial design, using materials like aluminum and glass to make complex technology feel like a premium, desirable object rather than a gray tool. In 1998, Tim Cook joined to manage the global supply chain. He overhauled the logistics and manufacturing systems, ensuring that millions of units could be built and shipped globally without inventory piling up in warehouses. Large-scale success requires a synchronized trinity: the vision to choose the right path, the design to architect the product, and the operations to actually build it at a global scale. This operational machine fueled a streak of hardware hits. They started by disrupting portable music, fitting 1,000 digital songs into a device that used a simple mechanical scroll wheel for navigation. In 2007, they combined the internet, a phone, and a music player into a single pocket-sized device, moving the web away from desktops and into the hands of billions of people. These devices generated a massive physical footprint. Large crowds occupied city blocks, waiting for days outside glass retail stores for the chance to buy the latest hardware. Following the death of Steve Jobs, the tech industry began to doubt if the company could survive without its primary visionary. When Tim Cook stepped into the CEO role, the skepticism was loud. He was an operations expert, not an inventor, and analysts openly questioned if he had the creative instinct to keep the company relevant. The answer arrived in 2014. Cook released the Apple Watch and the large-screen iPhone 6, a direct reversal of Jobs' personal philosophy that phones should remain small. By prioritizing what consumers wanted over rigid founder-led design principles, Apple changed its trajectory. The goal was no longer about frequent, radical disruptions. It was about capturing users within a massive, interlocking ecosystem. Cook built a system where every iPhone sold became a gateway to recurring revenue from the App Store, iCloud, and Apple Music, while accessories like AirPods and the Apple Watch secured the user's loyalty to the brand. Apple hit a $1 trillion valuation in 2018, $2 trillion in 2020, and $3 trillion by 2022. These milestones align perfectly with the company's internal manufacturing efficiency. The real engine of this growth is a flawless global logistics network. Tim Cook mastered the art of moving millions of physical components across oceans every single day, turning the company into a master of just-in-time manufacturing. To protect this system from global political tension, Cook is currently diversifying production, moving critical assembly hubs out of China and into India and Vietnam. By the end of his first decade, Cook had successfully transitioned Apple from an unpredictable startup into the most efficiently operated logistics company on Earth. Recent hardware cycles have settled into a predictable rhythm: slightly better cameras, upgraded faster chips, and familiar designs. As these iterations become more incremental, consumers are increasingly questioning if each new model is actually a necessary upgrade. This repetition is a side effect of scale. When a company depends on a supply chain of this magnitude, radical design changes represent a massive operational risk that could disrupt the entire revenue machine. This market dominance has also made Apple a target for regulators. In 2024, the United States sued the company for antitrust violations, claiming it used its power to stifle competition. Meanwhile, the European Union has issued massive fines, specifically targeting the closed nature of the App Store and restrictions placed on third-party developers. The same strategy that built a $3 trillion empire, the creation of a perfectly closed ecosystem, has now become the company's primary legal liability. While Apple focused on efficiency, the rest of the industry moved into a new race. Competitors like OpenAI and Google have spent years advancing generative AI, leaving Apple to play catch-up. Despite the launch of Apple Intelligence in 2024, early reactions suggest that systems like Siri remain significantly behind the conversational power of modern AI rivals. The software struggle is mirrored in hardware. The Vision Pro, launched in 2024, has struggled to find a broad audience due to its high price and a market that isn't yet ready for mixed reality headsets. This creates a dual crisis for leadership. Wall Street is demanding rapid AI deployment to maintain stock value, while users are waiting for hardware that feels like a genuine leap forward. Even with these challenges, Apple remains a powerhouse, maintaining over $400 billion in annual revenue and a global base of 2.5 billion active devices. But that massive scale is built on two fragile dependencies: the continued dominance of the iPhone and a supply chain that remains vulnerable to shifts in Asian geopolitics. After 15 years at the helm, Tim Cook has officially announced he will step down as CEO in September 2026. His chosen successor is John Ternus, the executive who has been leading the company's hardware division. Cook won't be leaving the building entirely. He will move into the role of executive chairman, allowing him to maintain significant influence over the company's long-term strategic direction. Steve Jobs gave the company a soul, and Tim Cook gave it a machine-like efficiency. The final question is whether a leadership built for optimization can survive an era that once again demands radical, ground-up disruption.